I think Dr. Charles Severance, there is no need presentation for him. He's very famous. He's very famous, sorry. He's very famous in our area. Almost everybody know him about the SIIE project. He was the creator, the leader, almost everything there. He's always working with team, and I can say with friends, but he was the leader of him. So I will read the little bio of Dr. Charles Severance, very well known in the world by Dr. Chuck, because he has a very active web page and very fun with many things. So Charles is a clinical associate professor and teaches in the School of Information at the University of Michigan, one of the best universities in the world. Charles is a founding faculty member of the Informatics Concentration undergraduate degree program at the University of Michigan. He also works now for Blackboard as the SIIE Chief Strategist. He also works with the IMS Global Learning Consortium, promoting and developing standards for teaching and learning technology. Previously, he was the executive director of the SIIE Foundation and the chief architect of the SIIE project, a platform that is used in many universities and schools in the world. Charles is the author of the book SIIE Free as in Freedom, that describes the early days of the open source SIIE project. Charles is also the author of the book Using Google App Engine from O'Reilly and Associates and the book Python for Informatics, Exploring Information. He also wrote the O'Reilly book titled High Performance Computing. Charles has a background in standards, including serving as the vice chair for the IEEE POSIX P1003 standards effort, and edited the standards column in IEEE Computer magazine from 1995-1999. So he is in almost all the organizations that we know, IEEE, SIIE, Blackboard, but he also collaborates with Moodle. Charles, this is the funniest thing, Charles is active in television and radio as a hobby. He has co-hosted several television shows, including Nothing But Net, produced by Media One, and a nationally televised program about the Internet called Internet SIIE. Charles appeared for over 10 years as an expert on Internet and technology as a co-host of a live call-in radio program on the local public radio affiliate. Chuck's hobbies include off-road motorcycle riding, karaoke, he's very well known because of this, and I can promise you that he sings very well, Frank Sinatra especially, and playing hockey. Hockey is popular here also, but over wheels.
Hockey.
Yeah, you are ice hockey, here is wheels hockey. Well, it's here more in Catalonia. I don't know if in Andorra there is one team. I'm not sure. Charles has a Bachelor of Science, Master of Science, and PhD in Computer Science from Michigan State University. So I think we don't need to say anything more. It's a very big honor for us to have such a brilliant professor in Andorra in the Symposium International of Computers in Education. And I will give you the time you want. I think we should end at 10, but if you need a little more time, I think we have to respect the authority of a professor. And he is presenting the University as a Cloud, Openness in Education. So again, we are talking about how is the present and the future of the education in this new scenario. So thank you very much, Chuck, for being here.
Thank you. So it's a pleasure to be here, and I really, this is my first time to Andorra, and I was very happy when Luis invited me to come, particularly somewhat celebrating the occasion of the Open University of Salle. It is an innovative idea, and I'm always attracted to innovative ideas. You might say that I'm crazy about innovative ideas. So this is a keynote speech, and so I will start as my first slide as a warning. This is not an academic presentation. This does not contain facts or data. It's ideas, interpretations, imagination, and guesses, and paranoia. The material is presented with simplification or exaggeration to make you think. Making you think is the goal of this presentation. So, for thousands of years, or for over 1,000 years, the university has been an organization that's had walls. The earliest universities were walled off. There's boundaries, there's edges, there's the people on the inside, and then there is sort of like the people on the outside. And when a student applies to a university, they are lucky enough to come to the inside and live with us on the inside and live a fantasy life that we live. And on the outside is the outside. And the idea of my talk is that we can no longer continue to have this notion that there is an inside and an outside. There can be a middle and edges, but they are fuzzy, and there is a boundary, and we must either adapt to this new environment or we will go away. So, for example, if you look at various architectures of universities, you can see a changing message as universities were built over time. This is King's College in Cambridge, England, from 1444. And if you stand right here and look in, using Google Street View, this is what you see. You see a fort, you see a door, you see a guard. It is like a fort. Now, if you're a young, wealthy student of King's College, you can easily go in and out of the door. But if you're a tourist walking down the street, they may or may not let you go in. Inside is beautiful. It's a garden, it's inviting, but it's not for us, it's for the special students. If we go to Stanford University, this part of Stanford is called the Quad. It was built in 1887. And if you stand here, it's very beautiful. They often play football and badminton in these, it's a beautiful lawn. And if you look in this direction with Google Street View, this is what you see. You do not see a door. You do not see a guard. You see a way that you can walk up, and you see a cross. It's very much like a church. And there's a mural. You are to be reverent. You are welcome, like in a church, but you are to show respect to the institution of the university. This is my building at the University of Michigan, called the North Quad, finished in 2010. This is the view from my office. It is a very beautiful view. You'll notice that my building imitates quads. The Quad of Cambridge, the Quad of Oxford. It has green in the middle, and it has sort of walls around the outside. But if you look from the top, you will see it's not really a fort. It is broken, and it's shifted. The fort has been split, and you can freely walk in to be as much a part of the inside as the students and the faculty of this organization. You can come in from the street in either direction. So while inside it feels like you're special and you're inside of a place that is only special for you, a tourist, including yourselves, if you ever come and visit, you just walk right in. Not only do we have openings that are inviting to everybody, not just the faculty and the students, but we have rooms that are specially designed to connect the community and the world around to the rest of the building. This little green area is a thing we call Space 2345, and this is what it looks inside. It's designed for concerts, art viewing, small parties, not loud parties because they would break everything, but small parties, fancy parties with little finger in the air kind of parties. And in this building, in this room right here, there is a door to the street and a door to the inside. It is a connector between the greater world. It is a boundary that's broken, very much a broken boundary, very much on purpose, to show that this is special and you should want to be part of our special community. But if you're not part of the special community, you are welcome to participate. If you were to walk into this building right here, you would see this scene right here. And you would walk in and the door would be unlocked. You would sit down in a comfortable chair. You would open your laptop and you would have free Wi-Fi for everyone, right? We're not talking EduRoam. We're talking free Wi-Fi for everyone who sits down. And as long as you don't cause trouble, you're welcome. Again, the world outside and the inside. The world outside is welcome to be part of the inside. And so the symbolic architecture of the university as a protected fort to the university as something that engages the community is also part of architecture. So the next part, I'm going to use the movie Ebenezer Scrooge, Christmas Carol. And I'm going to talk about, in the context of the Christmas Carol, the past, the present, and the future. And so, let's start with the past. If we think of the time from the beginning of academic thinking, perhaps Socrates, to 1930, universities were very wonderful and special places that educated a very, very small part of the population. And they were strange people. They wore strange clothes. They had funny hats. And they talked a lot to themselves and each other. And every once in a while, the king would give them some money to build a building. They might not be particularly wealthy, but they were comfortable and highly respected. And the research was really them talking to themselves and sending letters to each other and saying, I have invented calculus. What do you think? And so for literally 600 or 700 years, this was a very, and of course, the graduates would go and become kings. Or perhaps the graduates would go and become captains of industry, wealthy people. And the wealthy people would give money back. And the people with the weird hats would keep talking and keep educating and teaching Latin to the next generation. So the next generation of kings and captains of industry knew Latin, because Latin was one of the things that was necessary for a free citizen. This all changed in World War II. In World War II, for the first time, mostly because of Germany, wireless communication became the norm in war. Those who could communicate better were going to win. And so in World War II, the British, and to a lesser extent the Americans, the British went to Cambridge, and they brought people like Alan Turing. And they said, can you crack the code of the Germans? Otherwise, we may lose this war. And Winston Churchill, and another person less well known, Vannevar Bush from the United States, gave them as much money as they possibly could give them. They gave them an infinite amount of money. And in return, for the heads of state and the generals, it is said that the people at Bletchley Park won World War II because they were able to crack the German code. In many ways, the Germans probably would have won World War II if it wasn't for the cracking of this German code. So you see value. They gave lots of money, and they got lots of money back. They got safety and security back. Now, something else came out of this, and that is what they did at Bletchley Park was built the world's first electronic computer. Computers before World War II were mechanical devices with pulleys and switches and oil splashing everywhere. By the end of World War II, a computer hummed and was warm and was made from tubes. Now, people like Alan Turing, who built that computer, were sworn to secrecy. They could not tell anyone what they did. Many of the secrets in Bletchley Park were secret until the 1960s. But they all went to various universities, and they all invented computers. They didn't tell the secrets, but they knew how to make electronic computers. So they triggered an electronic age. And during this time, corporations became the captains of industry rather than people becoming the captains of industry. So people like John von Neumann, Alan Turing, they basically communicated to society that we should build computers. And they changed the world. All of a sudden, instead of building cars, we start building communication networks and computers, IBM, Sperry. And so these people transformed, both saved the government and transformed the economy and society. And so from 1930, World War II, through 1970, if you think about it, the main thing we did was made computers. And the people who were the smartest people were people in universities that invented the computers. Now, people in companies made the computers better, and they were always able to make the computers better. This happened again between 1970 and 2000, where a series of academics got money from the National Science Foundation, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Association, and gave great deals of money. I will, let's see how much time I got. Oh, I'm in great shape. I will let you meet some of these people. So I'll tell you who they are. This is Vint Cerf, the person who created the ARPANET. This is Larry Smarr, who created the supercomputer centers in the United States. This is Doug Van Houweling, who was the principal investigator on the NSFNet, the first internet in the United States. This is Robert Caillou, the co-inventor of the World Wide Web. And this is Joseph Harden, the person who caused Mosaic to be written. And this, of course, is Tim Berners-Lee, the other co-inventor of the web. So let me have you meet some of these people. Let's see. Who will we meet first?
Last month I was off in Boston for the 4th Annual World Wide Web Conference, and I had the opportunity to talk to the inventor of the World Wide Web, Tim Berners-Lee, and I asked him a little bit about where are we going with this web stuff. And we have just a little bit of footage from Tim telling us where that's going to be.
You didn't see nothing yet, but you wait until people assume the web. When the web becomes something you can assume, when the infrastructure is all laid down, when we have an information space, then it will be time for the next revolution, and who knows what that will be.
It's hard to imagine a greater revolution than what we've seen. I mean, I go to the smallest places and everybody's putting up a web page.
Right, but the web could only take place, the web revolution could only take place because the internet, which had been a quieter, smaller revolution, but that had been the internet itself quietly being deployed throughout the world, had happened because the internet was something people could assume the web revolution could take place. When the web is something you can assume, then maybe a cultural revolution, a nicer cultural revolution than the cultural revolution, perhaps, or maybe we'll find ways of doing things better that we hadn't imagined.
Pretty neat, Rich. One of the things that I liked about it was he just said his idea was the next step is something completely different, a cultural revolution as compared to just a little more technology.
So what to me is impressive is that was taped in 1995, and in some ways Tim Berners-Lee predicted many of the social changes that have been triggered in recent years. So even in 1995, Tim Berners-Lee was looking so far ahead that he sort of foresaw how people communicating together would transform society forever. So let me show you another one. Let me show you, Doug Van Houweling. How long is this one? Okay, so I need to introduce this one a little bit. So this is Doug Van Houweling. Doug Van Houweling actually still works at the University of Michigan. So the National Science Foundation Network, which became the first internet in the United States, was created by a National Science Foundation grant. But the telephone companies did not want this to happen. And so they tried to block the spending of the money on such a system, and they could not block it. So they decided that what they would do is they would limit the budget to $15 million for 5 years, because they knew that $15 million over 5 years would only purchase a nationwide network of 56 kilobits per second. And the network was to run from 1985 to 1990. So if AT&T and the lobbyists had got their way, oh wait, let me show you a different one. Yeah, let's do this one. We'll show you that one in a second. We'll show you this one. If the AT&T lobbyists had got their way, in 1990, the fastest connection in the United States that would go across the country would be 56 kilobits. Recall that in 1990 was when the web was created. Imagine the fact that if AT&T had been successful, the web would never have been created, and we would not be in this room. So let me introduce you to a fellow named Larry Smarr. Larry Smarr is from the University of Illinois, and he's from the National Center for Supercomputing Applications. And Larry Smarr proposed the notion that there should be 5 supercomputer centers in the United States, and they should be connected by a network. This is what led to the authorization of the NSFNet network.
But the trouble was that the telecom lobbyist in Washington would block any discussion of the federal government putting in the kind of network we have today, which is what people wanted. I mean, everybody knew that they wanted to have a ubiquitous email, person-to-person network. But as soon as they'd start talking about that, the telecom lobbyist would come up and say, no way, guys, that's private sector. Don't get the federal government involved in that. Stay out of it. But we said, oh, we'll just take a few of these esoteric supercomputers. And they said, okay, that's right. There's no market there. That's okay. The federal government has a role. Well, it was the same thing with networking. What we said is, we just want to put a high-speed backbone across the country to connect the 5 centers. And the telecom people said, okay, that's cool. You know, 56 kilobits was the national high-speed backbone, less than ISDN today. Yeah, that's not a market, okay? And we said, we got a few of these weird supercomputer types who are out in universities who want to hook into that. They say, yeah, that's okay. That's not a market. You can do that. Well, that was the NSFNet backbone. Then the regionals got funded, and then the campuses were afraid that if they didn't dig up their quad and put in some fiber, then the professors who wanted to get access to supercomputers would go to a university that would do that. So gradually, the whole internet emerged out of the sort of policy vice you get into Washington, where you can't do the right thing. You have to do something that seems irrelevant, but has a logic to it that will gradually bring the market forces into play that will spin out ultimately a whole industry.
So I'm going a little bit backwards in time, but let me show you another video of the people at the bottom of the slide. This is a video of Vint Cerf. Vint Cerf created the ARPANET. He was the principal investigator for DARPA to create the ARPANET. And this is all these are part of much longer interviews that I have.
The first demonstration of the ARPANET happens in the Washington Hilton Hotel basement in October of '72. A whole bunch of people from the interested networking community, packet switching community, attend, not only in the US, but from France and from England and Italy and Germany and elsewhere. That group of about 25 or 30 people convenes, sees the ARPANET in operation, sees applications that were being done, including Doug Engelbart's stuff, and then forms this international network working group modeled after the working group that Steve Crocker managed to build the ARPANET system. And at this point, I become the chairman of that group because Steve is busy at ARPA doing artificial intelligence.
So then let's keep meeting people. Oh, there we are. We already met him. We've met Larry Smarr. So let's now meet Doug Van Hollen. So Doug Van Hollen is the person that wrote the grant to the National Science Foundation that won to actually install the National Science Foundation network, which was the first nationwide network in the United States.
We realized very rapidly that $15 million would only fund a 56 kilobit network, which it was very clear, if it were even put in place, would rapidly become overwhelmed by the traffic. So we immediately started thinking, well, how could we expand the envelope? So we got tentatively an agreement from IBM that they would contribute the hardware and the software to create the routing structure for the network. But we still needed the communications facilities. Well, as you may recall, at that time, MCI was this fledgling organization. Some people had described it really as a law office trying to create an environment where they could actually offer telecommunications services up against AT&T's lobbying efforts. And they had just been successful in that. They were establishing facilities across the United States. And Dick Liebhaber saw this as an opportunity to sort of move MCI into the big time. So we wound up being able to submit a proposal to the National Science Foundation, I think for something like $14.7 million, because we knew the ceiling was 15. But in fact, by including all this in-kind activity, it was actually more like a $55 million proposal. And it wasn't designed to be 56 kilobits. It was designed to start at T1, or 1.5 megabits, with planned upgrades over the period of the network's life.
So then I will show you one more person. And this is Robert Caillou, who This is Robert Caillou, who with Tim Berners-Lee invented the, oh, that's not him. Oh, QuickTime is not him. Oh. Well, I won't show you that one. I'll show you this one instead. Oh, it's crashing. Okay. Okay, so this is Joseph Harden. He worked at the National Center for Supercomputing Applications, and he was the one that caused Mosaic, the first browser that ran on the Macintosh, Windows, and Unix at the same time.
NCSA was kind of a special place, right? One of those things that happens very infrequently where there's lots of energy, a large amount of resources, visionary leadership, and a lot of free space for people to play. Larry recognized from the beginning, and we all loved the idea, that these small little things on the desktop were really the gateways for everybody to the big machines in the background, and that all of this would turn into one cloud behind the screen that we needed to figure out how to get the user involved in as much as possible. So that's the context in which Dave Thompson pulled down one of the early web browsers. It was the one from Slack. He went through the effort of getting it working and brought it in and showed it to Mark Andreessen and I. And both of us looked at the screen. Dave described what he had in front of us. And we said, we can do better than that. That's a complicated system, and the interface looks terrible. And Dave said that it was a real pain for him to get it working, for him to download it and install it and compile it and everything. And it only works on the next Windows box. And wouldn't it be cool if it worked across all three of the boxes, and if it was something that was just a plug and go like the rest of our tools? I remember an HP exec coming in one time, and Mark and Eric had written a little filter that took Unix documentation and made it into HTML and made all of the references into links. And they hit an HP site, and the exec said, "Where's this coming from?" Because he was able to see all of his HP documentation there in the room at NCSA and navigate through it real easily. And he said, "Well, you've got 3 or 4 folks back there that have put up HTTPD servers. You may not know what those are yet." And he said, "I've never heard of this." And we said, but this is the kind of thing that is probably going to be really useful in the future for people who are trying to manage documentation in a distributed fashion. Yada, 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 right? We went on with a story like that, and this guy was bouncing up and down in his seat. And this was the kind of response that we got with it. In 93, late 93, early 94, there's this full suite of mosaics that work across the X Windows, the Mac, and the Windows system. And that's the point at which the guy who was the president at the time of the Internet Association said NCSA has fired a shot heard around the world, because it's available now across all these platforms and anybody can use it. And we saw, you know, an exponential growth in the number of HTTPD servers and the amount of traffic, yada, yada, yada. All that stuff that went on there. And Tim, of course, Tim Berners-Lee at this time would say, well, he had seen an exponential growth from the very beginning. And he's right. We're both right.
So I just introduced you to Vint Cerf, the creator of the ARPANET, with many others. Larry Smarr, who created the supercomputer centers and convinced Congress to fund a national network to connect them. Doug Van Houweling, who turned the national network from 56 kilobits into 45 megabits using MCI's money. I didn't show you Robert Caillou. I showed you Joseph Harden, and we've met Tim Berners-Lee. So these are all people who are academics, right? They all received money from the government, and they were solving problems. In the longer interview with Vint Cerf, which I haven't completed yet, one of the reasons that the ARPA funded the ARPANET was because they didn't want to have too many computers on people's desks in the military. They were trying to actually save money. It wasn't just sort of for wartime purposes. They were really trying to save money. And so these people, and many others, thousands and thousands of other people, these are just some to look at, we're actually producing solutions to the National Science Foundation, DARPA, etc. But they did something even more important when it comes to the commercial sector. They caused entire industries to be formed. Companies like Sun Microsystems, which took Unix and TCP/IP and put it into the first workstation, Microsoft Windows, Cisco. Cisco was created at the end of the NSFNet because IBM refused to commercialize the concept of a router. So all the people who had built the routers and the NSFNet left and went and formed Cisco. Okay? And so these folks between 1990 and 2000 effectively communicated ideas as to the kinds of problems that needed solving to create the greatest continued economic expansion the world has ever seen. And it really came from a bunch of gray-haired, slightly balding, slightly overweight academics, right? So the money that the government gave to these academics changed the world, literally. So now, let's look at the present. Can you think of an academic that you would use the word hero to describe? Can you think of an academic who has transformed society, who's created a whole new field, who's created new industries? In the 80s and the 90s, academics created entire trillion-dollar industries. Since 2000, they get a lot of research money. They wear really nice clothes when they go to graduation. They look very nice. What has the government gotten back from the billions of dollars that have been invested? Exactly. They didn't get the NSFNet. They didn't get the ARPANET. At the same time, the world has become global, partly because of the ideas from the 80s and the 90s. Companies like Apple, Twitter, Google, Facebook, Intel, Amazon, these are brilliant people. The people in these companies are brilliant. But they're also enabling globalization of the employment marketplace. So if we look to see where the most intelligent people are on the planet right now, They're not in academia, right? They are in industry. Steve Jobs, Jeff Bezos, Larry Page. Larry Page graduated from the University of Michigan. He got a master's degree from the University of Michigan, but he never got a PhD from Stanford because Stanford thought the idea of a search engine wasn't worthy of a PhD thesis. He was partially finished with his thesis about a search engine when he decided to quit and go form a little company called Google. So let me introduce you to one of these people. This is Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon.com. This is 1997. He is outside of a conference of librarians. We're in a room about the size of this room. He stood up, tried to convince a room full of librarians that maybe they might buy books from a little tiny online company that he'd founded called Amazon.com. Now, what I want you to listen for is listen how differently he thinks. Everyone we've heard so far, they're curious. They're problem solvers. They're not trying to make money. Listen how Jeff Bezos sees the world.
Hi there, who are you?
I'm Jeff Bezos.
And what is your claim to fame?
I'm the founder of Amazon.com.
Where did you get an idea for Amazon.com?
Well, 3 years ago, I was in New York City working for a quantitative hedge fund when I came across the startling statistic that web usage was growing at 2,300% a year. So I decided I would try and find a business plan that made sense in the context of that growth. And I picked books as the first best product to sell online, after making a list of like 20 different products that you might be able to sell. And books were great as the first best, because books are incredibly unusual in one respect, and that is that there are more items in the book category than there are items in any other category by far. Music is number 2. There are about 200,000 active music CDs at any given time. But in the book space, there are more than 3 million different books worldwide active and in print at any given time across all languages, more than 1.5 million in English alone. And so when you have that many items, you can literally build a store online that couldn't exist any other way. And that's important right now because the web is still an infant technology. Basically right now, if you can do things using a more traditional method, you probably should do them using the more traditional method.
What kind of inventory do you keep?
We inventory the best-selling books. At any given time, we're inventorying in our own warehouse only a couple of thousand titles. And then we do almost in-time inventory for another 400,000 titles or so. We get those from a network of we order electronically from a network of wholesalers and distributors. We order those today. They're on our loading dock the next morning. Then for another 1.1 million titles, we get those directly from 20,000 different publishers, and those can take a couple of weeks to get.
So Jeff at the end was describing a concept that we call the long tail. The fact that if you have mechanisms by which you can sort of stock in a catalog literally hundreds of thousands of products for which there is very low demand, you can still make money. It revolutionized how we think of commerce. This was taped in 1997. The book, A Long Tail, was written in 2005, almost 10 years later. So Jeff Bezos didn't read the book to figure out what the long tail was. Jeff Bezos invented the long tail, and almost 10 years later, somebody wrote a book to take credit for the long tail. So today, academics happily take research money and give very little back to the government. They don't win any. When's the last time an academic won a war? When's the last time an academic really sort of built some technology that changed the world? When is the last time an academic created a market? But in business, we see continuous ideas flowing not just from silly corporations like General Motors or Ford, but corporations that have people at the top of them, the people that generate the ideas. So let's take a bit of a detailed look at this picture right here so we can see what's going on. So, in a way, government wanted to have smart academics because they used to be awfully useful. So they created funding agencies like the National Science Foundation and DARPA. And so we have some academics. And so the idea is somehow get money to these academics. So how does the money get to the academics? Well, when you first become an academic, the first thing that you have to do is write a journal article. When you write a journal article, you have to convince an editorial board that your journal article is worthy. Then there's this other group of people that's pretty much the same as the editorial boards, called the funding panels. They take their cues from the editorial boards. The most people with the most journal articles get the most money, right? So you write a journal article, you convince someone to publish it, you get money for making paper. So you do this many times as you can. And then magically, at the end, your colleagues award you tenure. But did the government ever get anything back for its money? We have a game. It's called the tenure game. But we've lost sight of giving something back to the government who's given us the money. We believe that it is our divine right to have an unlimited amount of research funds deposited into the funding panels, and as long as we have friends on the funding panels, we will have very good travel budgets. So this is the engine of research that produces no perceptible output for society or no perceptible output for the governments. It is very difficult for the government to look taxpayers in the eye who are unemployed and say, I will give $200,000 to someone at a university, but you must remain unemployed, because it's the best thing for society. So faced with, in effect, over 15 years of little or no value coming from higher education for either research or teaching funding, and an economy, because of globalization, that's putting the first world economies in jeopardy, it is completely logical for governments to cut funding for education, both in research and teaching, across the board. It is not a temporary cut. It is not going to go back. Unless, of course, we have a world war and some academics win the war, which I actually doubt is going to happen, right? When will the academics change society or win a war? We are coasting on the work of people nearly 100 years ago. We created our research environment based on the inertia of people before the year 2000. So, that's the present. Let's talk about the future. Perhaps you don't want to see the future. If you recall, in Ebenezer Scrooge, at the end of the moment where Ebenezer has seen the present, he says, "Please, Spirit, show me no more. I'm a changed man." And of course, the Spirit simply raises the hand and points. And unless you are going to run out the back door, you are also, like Ebenezer Scrooge, going to see the future. I see one person leaving. You're the smart person. So let's go back to the past. Prior to 1930, when academics actually were useful, academics had funny hats, and they talked to each other. They wrote letters to each other. They called that research. The king would give them money to build a building once in a while. A railroad person who owned the railroads would give them money to build a building, and then they would graduate the next generation of wealthy people or government leaders. This is what the future looks like. We have a government. We have a bunch of happy academics, not so well paid perhaps. They write letters to each other about all their clever ideas and how clever they are. They keep these because they keep them warm, because it's expensive to heat the buildings that they're in. Every once in a while, the government will give them some money to build a building or something, and the graduates will be kind of given back to society. And large companies will give money once in a while, maybe to build a building or to fund chairs in a conference room or something like that. And we'll produce graduates. I mean, in a sense, graduates are our valuable outcome, right? Research is no longer our valuable outcome. It hasn't been for quite some time. And so basically we go back to kind of a quiet time, 1900. It's a little more complex because everybody wants an education, which means we can actually make money teaching. At the University of Michigan, where I'm from, our budget is $3 billion. The research is $1 billion. I am told that we really don't make profit on the research because research is costly. You have to give people labs. You have to hire them graduate students. In the final analysis, even though we have $1 billion of research money, the university makes its money from teaching. In the future, teaching will be a sure way to make money as long as we can appeal to our graduates, our students. So, that's the future. Or is it? If you recall, in Ebenezer Scrooge, after Ebenezer was shown the future, we go to a graveyard. Ebenezer falls to the ground and brushes away the snow to find the name on the tombstone and starts crying and says, "Oh, Spirit, are these the shadows of what must be, or are they the shadows of what might be?" The Spirit does not answer, and sobbing, Ebenezer Scrooge finds himself in his bed the next morning, a changed man. And he says, "The spirits have done it all in one night." The future is not predetermined. We have a choice in the future. Oops. I need to know what time it is so I don't talk too long. Oops. So here we have the problems of the present. Research comes, we give nothing back to the government. That's going to go away after a while. Companies are full of ideas. The smart people are all coming from companies. We give them graduates, and that's good. We can make money teaching. So that's how it looks if you're a well-established faculty member. But what if you're a brand new faculty member? You're young. You see that this world is not going to last through your entire career. What should you do? I should put up another warning. If you're a young faculty member and you take my advice and you don't get tenure, don't blame me. This is just ideas to make you think. So I would claim, if you're a young faculty member, should you base your entire career on producing dusty pieces of paper for journals, going after an ever-shrinking government dollar? Or should you attack the world? Should you expose the world to your ideas? Should you compete with the companies? Should you work in a world full of ideas? Instead of writing journal articles, broadcast your ideas broadly. Create the greatest students in the world. Get your money from as many sources as you possibly can. So that's my recommendation. University as a cloud. Open, engage, be relevant, be part of society. Don't hide behind the walls and wait for the government to give us money. So here's some guiding principles to a young faculty member. Market yourself. Be confident. Free your ideas. They actually have almost no value whatsoever inside your head and in a journal article. If you do research, measure it based on how you change the real world. Is the world changing because of your research? Maybe it's changing in a small way, but if the only output is a piece of paper, then it's probably not sustainable. Real world impact. Tenure has got to evolve to being famous, to being well known for the kinds of things that you've done. Your deeds are legend. We'll give you tenure. Work on things you're passionate about and change the world. It's all looking outward. So now I'm going to give you a couple of examples of this. And again, I have to warn you. If you take my advice literally, you'll probably never get tenure. Okay? So these are just ideas. Don't apply them directly. So first, create an identity and don't be shy. The title of my webpage, if you look up at the top, Dr. Chuck's awesome webpage, right? If I don't say I'm awesome, who is? Don't be shy. Write a blog, but don't just write a blog about your cat or what you ate, even though I do write blogs about what I eat. Put your best ideas. This is an example of one of my good ideas. This is from 2006. I was sitting on a plane, and I hate my Apple's keyboard because I have to look at it. A BlackBerry keyboard you don't have to look at because it has raised keys. And I thought to myself, why not make a tiny plastic overlay that would stick onto the Apple that had tiny little raised ridges that would tell my fingers where the keys are? I could put it on, I could take it off. So all of a sudden I have the best of both worlds. I have an Apple with a physical manifestation of the location of the keys on the screen. So I wrote this down, and I did what all sort of tinkerers do. I wrote a napkin, and I drew a picture of it, and I signed it, and I put the date on it. I went to my university, as I am supposed to do, and I said, I think this is a good idea for a patent. We could all get rich from this. And they took about a week, and they said, because a patent costs about $10,000, they said, nah, we don't want to spend $10,000 on your patent and make you and us both rich. So I sat for a few months with the idea on my desk. I could spend $10,000 to patent this out of my own pocket. But after 3 months, I decided, nah, I did not want to patent it either. So what do? I just wrote a blog post. And I put the word patent in there. And in 2006, I patented this idea, at least in the public, which means that nobody can patent this, at least after 2007. 1 year after an idea is revealed, it's no longer patentable. So I was going to piss off Apple and piss off Samsung. So a year ago, I met, I don't know if this translates well, some patent trolls. Do you know what patent trolls? These are people that buy patents to be evil with them. I was consulting with these lawyers that made patents just in case somebody like Apple might use such a thing. I was consulting with them on some other matter, and I told them about this, and their eyes got really big. They thought, this is the greatest thing ever. I said, well, take a look at my blog. My patent is in my blog. So they looked at it, and they saw that it was 2006, and they said that I was an idiot, and that they could have made me very, very wealthy. Too bad I hadn't met them in 2006. Later, I was having dinner with some friends from Samsung. Samsung, of course, you know, doesn't like Apple very much and is highly competitive. And so I said to Samsung, I said, here's an idea, and it's free. It can't be patented because I put it in my blog in 2006. They said, thank you. We'll give this to our research people. Now, I've heard nothing since, but if 10 years from now you see a Samsung thing with a peel-off keyboard that gives you a sense of touch, you'll know that it came from my blog. Now, my idea, which I think is a brilliant idea, is so far useless to me. Although I did get, I think, a free trip to Korea out of it. But it's generally useless. We're full of ideas in academia. Share them. Most of the ideas are useless. All the companies' ideas, we hear about them. But academics' ideas, they die because we're trying to protect them. Write your own story, even if you have to write an autobiography. I am very arrogant. I wrote an autobiography. I think I've sold like 400 copies of my autobiography. Create a personality. This was a mean-faced version of myself with a tattoo. See that tattoo? I really have a tattoo. I put that tattoo on for the cover of the book because I'm looking at the people that made me angry during the Sakai project, and that's to frighten them, to make them look that they are in some danger from such a mean guy. So I have this tattoo. That's me getting the last part of the tattoo. I ride a motorcycle. I'm creating a personality. Here is a picture of me with the tattoo, with Martin Dougiamas, the inventor of Moodle, and David Mills, the inventor of Angel. This is the Moodle logo on my tattoo, and that's the Angel logo on my tattoo. The tattoo was to celebrate the vendors that used my IMS Learning Tools Interoperability standard, and so they all are in a circle if they complied with the standard that I invented. Make fun of yourself. I don't know if anyone has seen the extremely funny video, the iPad steering wheel mount. So the iPad steering wheel mount is a fictitious commercial that I made for a mount that puts your iPad on your steering wheel so that you can drive and read the newspaper while you drive. The biggest problem that most people point out when they read about the iPad steering wheel mount is that in the case of an accident, the airbag will deploy and cause the iPad to hit you in the face. But another commenter came up to us with a solution for that, and that is to install an airbag application on the iPad. Be part of a large open source project. Make many friends. Sakai was an open source project. There's Joseph Harden. You also met him. He did Mosaic before he did Sakai. Sakai is how I met Luis. Sakai continues to enrich in my life by the thousands of people that I've met working on that project. I mentioned the IMS Learning Tools Interoperability. This is probably my greatest research contribution, and it can be summarized in about a page and a half. And it took me almost 10 years to achieve. It solved the problem with all these learning management systems of Blackboard, Moodle, Sakai, and you want to plug something in, and they all had a different way of doing it. So I spent my life after Sakai, working with IMS. I worked with publishers, vendors, academics, open source projects. I did everything I could. I traveled the world over. And so here's, for example, Mark Allier. This is Mark Allier and me at his house with Jordy, because back when there was only like 8 people who were using IMS Learning Tools Interoperability, 3 of them are right there. And we were singing karaoke that same night, as a matter of fact. That was 2008. So, and there's me and Martin Dougiamas. I showed him my tattoo before I'd done my book, and so he couldn't publish it. And I've been all around the world, met all these people, and so these people have become my friends, right? So there's Mark, of course, and his baby, who's now much older, like his baby's this big now. But I start getting Christmas cards, and the karaoke's a big part of this. Beer and karaoke, and I have to convince people to adopt my research. I can't just write a paper. I have to convince vendors to adopt my research. And so in 2011, this thing went crazy to the point where virtually every major learning management system now adopts my standard. And it is transforming the world of education. It is a simple idea that I spent 7 years promoting, and hundreds of thousands of miles on airplanes and everything, and now people are using it that don't even know who I am. But I made a difference. I made an impact. My research was small and simple, but viral. My research touched something that people wanted, and then they moved it on to somebody else. As a result, I have 1 million miles on airplanes. So if you want to know what you get after you've been on an airplane at Delta for 1 million miles, this is 1 million real miles. You get a pen. So I had a free pen for flying 1 million miles in an airplane. Another thing that I've done is teach a very large class called, you saw some of the videos from my Internet History, Technology, and Security. Has anybody here taken my class? Okay, well usually there's somebody in the room that's taken it. And it's on Coursera, which is a massively open online teaching. And so this is a picture of Barca Stadium. So there are roughly 95,000 people in Barca Stadium. My class had 50,000 people registered for it, which is half of Barca Stadium. By the time we got to the first week in the class, only about 15,000 people, this group right here, were still in my class. But yet, that's probably the group that cheers for Messi when he sort of kicks the goal in, right? There's 15,000 people in my class. As a matter of fact, my class started at about 15,000, and after 8 weeks, it ended up around 5,000. 5,000 people passed my test. For me to teach 5,000 people at the University of Michigan in my one class that I teach in the fall would take me 32 years to teach 5,000 people. These 5,000 people are all over the world. This is a picture of where they took the course. We asked what country or state were they from. This is a picture of where they went to school, because I figured that would be more interesting, because if you just ask what country you're from. So if you zoom in on this, and you can look at the URLs here if you like. Their URLs are there. We can zoom in to here we are. So I'm a little disappointed that no one from Andorra took my class. But quite a few people from Catalonia took my class. And if you zoom in on Barcelona, you can see that the various universities in Barcelona, people were taking my class from Barcelona. I also had office hours in Barcelona. How much time do I got? 51. Running out of time, so I won't show you the video. So I've done office hours all over the world because I want to face my students and I want to learn from them. But in addition to that, I also have said if 5,000 people will send me a self-addressed postage stamped envelope, I will give them a sticker, right? So they did this class and they're going to get a sticker for the back of their laptop. So perhaps my approach seems a little crazy and a little chaotic. I want to share with you how I got my last grant. I got my last grant from a tweet. I was very angry, and I said the following tweet on February 15, 2012. I need someone to raise funds and give them to me so I can do cool stuff and they can take the credit. In a few hours, I get a text message from an unknown area code 202 phone number that says, "You will soon work for me," after they saw the tweet. Just over a month later, Blackboard announced that I was the Chief Sakai Strategist for Blackboard, working as a part-time executive to help with the Sakai strategy. My budget in this role for the first year was $250,000 to spend on Sakai any way that I saw fit, and my budget in the second year of this role to spend on Sakai any way I see fit is $500,000. In addition, I carry around a Blackboard corporate American Express card, which means that I can buy dinner, if you like. So my current grant goes on now, as long as I want, forever and ever and ever. My summer salary is covered, my consulting salary is covered, and I have $250,000 to spend on things that I care about in open source software. I think the tattoo actually helped quite a bit. So I said that faculty in the future have got to engage the world. They've got to push themselves into the world. They've got to touch the world. They've got to communicate. They've got to compete with Jeff Bezos and Larry Page. They've got to have their ideas fighting out there. And in addition, money can flow from industry to academia if our ideas are good. We first must send the students and the ideas out, and then the money can flow. And the government, as a source of money, it's just really not relevant to me. Most of the people in government that would give me money, I have very little respect for their ideas. I don't even want to take their money because I don't want to work on the things that they want me to work on. One thing that's true in life is usually the more money a person has to give away, the less wise they are about what to do with that money. So I don't think about the government. I think about competing with industry as a faculty member. So I started talking about a university that had boundaries and edges and walls that protected itself from the outside world. And I said that we needed to change so that the edge of the university is soft, so the faculty member can leave and come back. Faculty member can engage with their ideas and then come back. The faculty member can have their students go out, affect industry, and come back. It has to be a soft border. New people must be able to come in and see the ideas that we have. But it's not easy. We need new structures. Tenure is very inflexible. We need flexibility. Tenure must understand that achievement and impact come in many different forms and not just tenured not just papers. They must find ways to support and nourish innovative and entrepreneurial faculty members. And education has got to focus on leading to student value and not just teaching Latin over and over and over again, or some other version of Latin. Maybe that would be called Lisp. But sometimes the structures that we have in place are so fossilized that we must start anew. We're doing this at the University of Michigan. We are creating, in the School of Information that I'm a member of, you might think of this as informatics, a new degree called the Bachelor of Science in Information. We are doing this not just to make money, but to change the world through teaching. The simple version of what this degree is that I am disappointed in technical degrees because of their lack of the liberal arts. And I am disappointed in liberal arts degrees because their lack of technical things. Is it possible to create the perfect degree that is a balance of the liberal arts and technical things? Or put another way, is technology another liberal art? Right? Should technology, and I'm not talking computer science, I'm talking understanding the technical world in which we live today, is that as important as chemistry? As important as Latin? I believe so. One of my theories is the students we create define us. Increasingly, the students we create are going to define us because the federal government and the research is going to go away. I mentioned that I've taught a large online class with Coursera. Coursera came from a Stanford faculty member who sort of went on the other side of the wall and made a company, Daphne Kohler and Andrew Ning. Udacity is similar. But Stanford is so committed that they don't think that Coursera and Udacity, even though they came from Stanford, are enough. Stanford has started 2 more teams inside of itself to build Stanford Online. Is the first open university coming from a name brand university where the classes are free. Free, anywhere, everywhere. They are building software to support this, and the software is open source. It's called Class2Go. You can be sure that sitting on that laptop right there, there's a copy of Stanford's Class2Go software. It needs a bunch of work, but that's never a problem. So I want the University of Michigan to do the same thing. So I go to a provost, the provost who started us on Coursera, and I said, Stanford is the first. We cannot be the first. Can we be the second? And she goes, I'm the vice provost for finance. Can you tell me how I'm going to make money? And I say, no, I can't tell you how we're going to make money, at least not now. She goes, well, get back to me when you can. So I go to my dean, Jeff, and I say, Jeff, could you give me $100,000 or $200,000 to hire some grad students to do this, perhaps as the School of Information online? Jeff's like, oh, we got so many things that we're working on right now. Could this wait for like a couple of years? So they haven't said no, but they haven't said yes. So now you've heard me for about an hour. Can you imagine what my reaction is going to be when Martha the provost says no and Jeff the dean says no? I am going to create my own online university with free and open classes. Class to go. Take online classes from Dr. Chuck anywhere. The URL is online.drchuck.com. I will not wait until my bosses say it's okay. I will blaze the path. Even if I'm a fool, I will blaze the path. I have been a fool before, and it's worked out very well for me. My hope is that others will follow me once I start. Now, here's the interesting thing. I went to Martha, the provost, and I said, Martha, if you're not going to do it, then I'm going to do it. I'm going to make Dr. Chuck Online University. And guess what she said? You are a faculty member at the University of Michigan, and as long as you don't misuse our logo, you are welcome to do it. Because I work at a place that understands that their job is to permit me to work at Blackboard, to permit me to invent my own online university if this is what I want to do. I may fail, but their job is not to stop me. Their job is to support me and make sure I have a decent salary and can feed my children and have a nice credit card to buy dinners when I need to do that, and take a risk like this that could pay off for everybody, not just me. I hope that when I'm done with this, my School of Information will quickly follow and will rename it, but I am going to start because I am not patient. That's why it's particularly an honor to be here with another set of people who are fearless. And perhaps they're doing things that are not logical. Perhaps they were doing things that people would say, no, they should not do. But yet, we stand here, and there is the Open University of LaSalle. That is a worldwide, small, but passionate open university that is not waiting for the government to give it money. That is figuring out what to do and how to create some new future where we define the future rather than let places like Apple and Microsoft and Amazon define the future. Thank you for your time.
I will pay later what we agreed about this last comment. I don't know if what you say everybody can do this.
No, no.
I think you have got a state of freedom that everybody can envy. But really, it's a model. It's a model that Chuck is breaking the rules in some sense. He's being here own boss in some sense. So we can start. We are out of time, but don't worry. We have time for questions because I think this is so important that we cannot skip this time of questions. So.
Okay. Sorry, about what you said in the end, this thing about working by yourself. Not off the record, but
yep.
If you don't use the logo of the Michigan University, you're allowed to do everything. So we admire this kind of work because this is not so easy here in Spain and Europe. So I think it's the way you should go to. Besides, I wanted to talk the second slide about the present, when you said that the government gives money to the people who study and working, but it's unknown what they get back from, like the government. Should it be like the data, like Facebook, Twitter, so they have this feedback that this dark side that we didn't know, but they have all our data, so.
So I had the same thought that you had as a flaw in my logic. So you point out a flaw in my logic. That's why I said that this is not fact, it is a story. It's like a movie where certain facts are So let me explain what the bigger flaw in the logic is. And that is, if you go back to the moment where society needed the researchers and all the money started to flow, the place they went to was the university, the very university that itself was not well-funded, was not. And the university researchers were sitting around and talking to each other and writing each other letters and doing very little, and yet they'd conceived of a future that then turned into the future with the addition of the government money. So I think what you're saying is for the government to imagine that it needs to have immediate results for every bit of research, and that's wrong. You're correct, right? There needs to be broad investment for whatever it is that we don't know that we need yet, right? So we might need a way to plug tools into learning management systems. Great. We kind of knew we needed that, so some research can be applied. But not all research needs to be applied. But I think so I agree with your point. But the thing that I would say is, so it's completely valid to have research that doesn't have immediate payoffs. The question is, what's it worth to society? And we all go and get 100,000 euros or 200,000 euros or 500,000 euros. And if all we give back is like a little, little bit of data or whatever, it doesn't. So I think that what we'll find is we should keep doing that research, right? That more speculative research that's not as applied, but we should not expect to get as much money for it, right? That's the problem. That's the problem that's not going to change. If you want a lot of money, it's going to have to be different. I just don't think the government is going to go back to just giving money for ideas or potential ideas or speculative research. And it's as much the economy. But the problem with these economies is once the economy rebounds, they tend to keep the money. Once they've cut off giving the money, they don't, when they get more, they don't start giving the money the way they did it before. They do something else with the money, build more roads or whatever. And so your point is well taken, right? There is value in research that doesn't have immediate payoff. And I have done many of things that don't have immediate payoff in my own career. And somebody's paying for that. But we're going to have to learn that subsidizing our research will take teaching. Teaching will be able to subsidize our research rather than, I mean, another way to put it is, you can imagine the sort of the stereotype of the research faculty member who never goes in the classroom. That probably is going to be less and less sustainable, right? Because the tons of money that just get dumped in, kind of in this notion that somehow that smart person is going to save the world, so we're going to find that back to the 1920s, the researchers will be the people who are teaching, but the teaching will give them the space to do the research rather than the research funding coming from the government and then them never teaching. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Okay. It's a good question. I had the same thought when I was watching my own slides. It's full of flaws.
On the right, the woman from Czechia.
My idea is that government gives a lot of research money to academics, but when they do something valuable, they just create some spin-off, some company, and the government must pay for the results she has been paying before, because it is closed, it is patented and everything. Isn't it strange?
Actually, I would not call that strange at all. I would call that wonderful, right? That's called wonderful, and that's called building an economy. And so it is in the interest of a government in your country to build an economy in your country. And if your government invests in a clever researcher who makes impact to the point where that can become revenue, and that person sort of jumps out, or maybe even sort of puts feet in both places, your economy is getting better, right? That's a competitive advantage for a university and a country that allows that to happen. And the payoff is great. So for example, at the University of Michigan, if you went back 20 years and you created something in the university of value and you wanted to start a company and step outside the university, they would tell you that the thing you created was theirs.
Okay.
And that when you walk out, you have to buy it from them, right? So here you are with this idea that might only be half of a good idea, that's going to require further investment to make it a good idea. You're going to leave the university, and to take your half of an idea with you, you must write them a check for $100,000. It's like, it's only half an idea. So the way this works these days at the University of Michigan is that when a faculty member comes up with an idea and they want to move outside and commercialize that idea, not only is there no charge for the idea, but the university gives money to the person because they want the person to be successful. And they want our city, Ann Arbor, to be a wonderful city to live in with many good jobs. And so the first reaction these days of my university is to invest in a faculty member who has a good idea. And then the National Science Foundation has this grant called the SBIR, the Small Business Research Incentive something. So the next thing you do is you get money from the university. You've left the university, maybe a temporary leave. You leave the university, you get money from the university, you get a small amount of money from the National Science Foundation to build a business because the U.S. government wants people to make things and create revenue and make jobs, etc.
Yeah, but it's the value the government gets back from the researchers. It's what you are saying, it's nothing, but it's... you must count also the product of, I don't know, Google, because the idea was on the university in his PhD during his PhD studies.
Right.
And then he created Google. So
yes.
The value
and
is there.
While he was a PhD student, somebody paid his salary, because most PhD students in the United States at high schools are paid during their entire time. But I think that the government is happy, because the government can't make new things. But if they can feel that they were somehow part of the making of something new, it's not a bad thing.
I'm from Andorra. It will be a pleasure to assist your classes.
As I will see you the next semester.
It will be a pleasure. I have a question. What is your opinion about the future of the virtual learning environments in education, considering the idea of personal learning environments and the open cloud university?
So,
what are you doing at 6? He can come again.
So let me come up with a short version of that. I think that you have realized during this hour that I am very cynical, right? That I look for the negative in many things. So I look at what we've done in virtual learning environments like Moodle and Sakai as adequate, but not inspiring at all. I look at open courseware like MIT as a terrible waste of energy. It has nothing to do with teaching, has nothing to do with students. It has only to do with the marketing of MIT. Of course, I'm from a university that competes with MIT, but I will say that I'm not speaking for my university, by the way. I just think that MIT used that to make themselves look better without impacting education. So the future of the virtual learning environment is to empower teachers around the world to work together to create new curriculums that can be taught around the world and localized to each and every place. The problem that OpenCourseWare had was that it was dead. It made PDFs, which as a teacher, you couldn't do anything with. So what I'm working on, in addition to Class2Go, is to imagine using EPUB 3. Are you familiar with EPUB 3? So EPUB is the format for Kindles and other readers that were black and white and very boring. That was EPUB 2. EPUB 3, you can put any media, questions, HTML5, and I believe that we will find a new form that is a combination of a course and a book in a single file that you can download and you can put in your virtual learning system, whether it be Moodle or Sakai or Blackboard, but you can edit it. And you can change what I do to translate it to your language and change the cultural references from my cultural references to your cultural references, change the pace from the pace of my students to the pace of your students. Maybe you're teaching a junior level class and I'm teaching a freshman level class. And then you can share it as well. And we create a culture of sharing. I mean, if we learned one thing from OpenCourseWare, it's that culture is so important to learning. I think Coursera doesn't get this right. OpenCourseWare doesn't get this right. Coursera basically means that if you can conform to my culture, you can learn. I think that's arrogant. I think we must create, and it doesn't exist yet, but we're getting very close. I'll come back in 3 years, and we will have a virtual learning environment that can export, import, remix, and move. It's a technical problem, something that's very passionate, that I feel very passionate about. That's the future, and we're nowhere near it. And frankly, everybody's going in the wrong direction as far as I'm concerned. Even Coursera. I love them. But they, maybe after beers, I will tell you. It's just, so here's the problem. And you're right to say that I'm very lucky, because I don't care about money. I don't care about money. My family's been well fed. I live in a nice house. I travel where I want to travel. So I have the luxury of not caring about money. It seems as though everyone who has a chance to innovate in the space of teaching and learning turns it into a way to make money immediately. And they fail. They don't really change learning. They get far enough to make money, and then all they do is think about making money. I don't think that way. And that's what's guided my career for the past 10 years. Because I believe in teachers, I believe in helping teachers, I believe teachers need to help each other. I believe that there's nothing on this planet yet that's accomplished that. Any other questions?
More questions? I have one question, Chuck.
Yes.
You have traveled all around the world. You have friends all around the world. I think it's interesting what you have said, because we can become nervous, because you are saying that the governments are not paying universities for research anymore, and this is not something temporary, it's permanent. So we could think that we are in risk, but you say, well, money can come from many other places. Companies, people. It's real that when a student is very brilliant and he goes to a company, sometimes the company is hiring services to the university. This is happening in Europe. But as you see many differences between the continents. Here in this room, there is people from America and there is people from Europe. And in our network in Salle, I have noticed a big difference between America, Asia, and Europe. Europe is more based as a culture about the public services, governments, and so on. Asia and America, there are more benefactors. This is something that you didn't talk so much, but there is a big difference. When I travel to my colleagues, universities of La Salle in Manila, in Colombia, in Mexico, all of them have benefactors. Mm-hmm. All the students that are paying millions of dollars for doing buildings and so on. I don't perceive this reality in Europe. Some organizations are doing it, but not most of us. Did you get this difference? Do you think Europe should do a big chance in that, or is only a very partial thing about the sustainability of universities?
So I think that each culture is going to move at its own pace. Each culture is going to be different. You're absolutely right. But I do think that the one thing that is true and going to stay true is that those who hide their ideas and keep them to themselves will go away. Those who compete with their ideas, and whether it's Mexico or Asia or America or Russia or Europe, we are going to be judged by the ideas that we put in the public. And I think that we've got, so it's not that everything that I said that I did do or my strategy is going to work everywhere in the world. It's probably only going to work like at one place, and it's my office, right? It's only going to work in my office. But the concept that everything that I did started from sharing of ideas and not writing journal articles, right? It's really more, if there's one thing about this, it's find ways to share your ideas and create, both as an organization and as an individuals within an organization, find ways to get your ideas in front of the people with the money other than through a journal article. I'm not saying don't write journal articles. I'm just saying the government must see what we do. Society must see what we do. Companies must see what we do. I think we're wonderful. I think we're all brilliant. I think we're hiding it. We've got to share it.
Maybe it's the path we must follow also in Europe in order we can have the same people that loves university and have this track. Thank you very much for coming here. It's very nice to have friends all around the world, so you can call them to give these speeches. And I hope that you think the same that I'm saying. I am seeing the faces, so I am okay. So thank you very much.